You ever stop and wonder what happens to a great civilization when it dies? I don't mean just losing a war or fading from power. I mean vanishes, gone, leaving behind just whispers and ruins. History is absolutely littered with the ghost stories of empires that were once the center of the known world. And their stories, well, they're talking to us right now. It really is the ultimate mystery, isn't it? One minute, you've got these incredible, sprawling cities, amazing art, advanced science, and the next, just silence. So that's the big question we're going to dig into today. We're going to play detective and look at the clues they left behind. So our first stop is way back, over 4,000 years ago, in what we now call Pakistan and India. The people of the Indus Valley were living in cities like Mohenjo-daro, and get this, they had organized streets, public baths, even advanced drainage systems. I mean, that's a level of urban planning that some modern cities are still trying to figure out. And then, poof, they were gone. And what's so wild is that archaeologists, they can't find any clear evidence of a massive war or a huge invasion. The leading theory right now, it points to climate change and the rivers that were their lifeline literally changing course. Their entire world just dried up around them. Okay, so the Indus Valley is just one piece of this giant puzzle. To really get the full picture, to see the pattern, we've got to look at more clues from all over the world. So let's see what else the ruins have to tell us. All right, our investigation now takes us into the jungles of Central America to look at the brilliant and incredibly mysterious Mayan civilization. The sheer genius of the Maya it's breathtaking. These people were absolute masters of their world. They were charting the stars, they developed complex mathematics, and they created calendars so precise they actually rival our own today. And they built these massive, incredible pyramids using pure manpower and ingenuity. No wheels, no metal tools. Think about that. But for all their brainpower, the Maya just couldn't outsmart the pressure they were putting on their own environment. It seems like a perfect storm of long-term drought, cutting down way too many trees, and just too many people for the land to support. That was their undoing. Around the 9th century, they just walked away from their magnificent cities and let the jungle take them back. Our next piece of evidence comes from a civilization that, for the longest time, seemed like it would last forever: ancient Egypt. Now, unlike the Maya or the Indus Valley, Egypt's end wasn't some sudden event. It was a slow, long, drawn-out fade. For literally thousands of years, it was a dominant world power. But as you can see from this timeline, great civilizations don't always collapse in a spectacular crash. Sometimes they just slowly unravel over centuries. Yeah, there wasn't one single thing that brought them down. Instead, it was this relentless combination of pressures. Foreign invasions kept chipping away at their military. Internal political squabbles and power grabs weakened them from the inside, and their economy just slowly failed. It was truly a death by 1,000 cuts. For our final historical clue, we're going to the very cradle of civilization itself, Mesopotamia, the land nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The legacy of Mesopotamia is just immense. We owe so much of our modern world to these people. They gave us the first written language, the very first legal codes, and the whole idea of a city as the center of human life. But here's the tragic irony: their own success became their downfall. The constant warfare between the city-states just exhausted their resources. And their irrigation methods, the very thing that made the desert bloom, eventually made the soil so salty that crops couldn't grow anymore. They literally poisoned the land that fed them. Okay, so of course, we can't talk about lost civilizations without addressing the elephant in the room. Or, I guess, the island in the ocean. What about Atlantis? Right, so the story comes to us from the Greek philosopher Plato. He described this super powerful naval empire that ticked off the gods and then sank into the sea in a single day and night. But was it real? Well, most scholars today think it was probably a symbolic story, like a cautionary tale. But there are some theories that it could have been inspired by a real-life catastrophe, like the mind-bogglingly huge volcanic eruption that wiped out the Minoan civilization on Crete. So for now, Atlantis remains this captivating mystery. Okay, we've gone through the case files. Now it's time to connect the dots. Because when you lay all these clues out together, a really clear pattern starts to show up. Let's call them the 4 horsemen of collapse, because these 4 things, they just show up again and again. First, you've got environmental stress, stuff they can't control. Second, you've
You've got them mismanaging the resources they can control. Third, the society itself starts to rot from the inside. Think rising inequality and really bad leadership. And finally, conflict, either with their neighbors or with each other. It's almost always a combination of these pressures hitting a society right when its own complexity makes it super vulnerable.
So, here's the kicker. Here's why all this really matters. This isn't just some interesting history lesson. These are echoes. And if you listen really closely, you can hear them in our own world today.
Just look at the parallels. The ancient world dealt with their river shifting course. We're dealing with our seas rising. They face salty soil. We face industrial pollution on a massive scale. They had localized deforestation. We've got global climate change. The scale is way bigger now, but the fundamental threat, it's eerily similar.
And this, right here, might be the most humbling lesson of all. The Maya were brilliant astronomers. The folks in the Indus Valley were master engineers. But all their intelligence, all their complex systems, it couldn't save them. In fact, you could argue that very complexity made them more fragile. It's just a stark reminder that progress isn't some magic shield against collapse. Which brings us to the final and, let's be honest, the most important part of all this. We've heard the echoes from the past. The big question is, what are we going to do now that we've heard them?
This is the key takeaway. These stories are not just fascinating tales from dusty old books. They are active warnings. They are lessons written in stone and sand, sent to us across thousands of years. The past is speaking directly to our present.
You know, the ideas from these lost civilizations, they helped to build our world. And their failures, they gave us a roadmap of all the dangers to avoid. So the ultimate question isn't really about why they failed. It's about us. Looking at all the parallels, facing our own challenges, will we be the civilization that finally learns from their mistakes?